of guiding you through some of the kind of digital archiving that we've been doing around this sort of stuff as well during the workshop. Anthony.
Yeah, hi, I'm Anthony. I'm a colleague of Rosemary's at Mayday. I'm also kind of like work on archives at Mayday and events, and specifically, especially during Corona period, we've been working a lot with kind of developing digital archives and making them accessible, because for a large part of the period we have to be able to have the building open. But we have recently reopened, and I should say that. So, and there's kind of, yeah, so it's possible to come and visit Mayday as an archive and work there.
So we were thinking to go around and ask people to introduce themselves, and also a bit about maybe why they're interested in what we've called radical spaces, or I suppose archiving as well. So if people feel like they want to share that, that would be great. Does everyone know how to unmute themselves? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Does anyone want to start, or?
Oh, sorry, maybe go in the order of the screens. I'm not sure if we all get the same, but.
Okay. Jerry, would you like to?
Hello. Yeah, I've only got you on the screen. I'm just here out of curiosity, really. Yeah, basically, I'm a woman in Hampshire. I'm not in any group or anything. In fact, all my neighbours around here seem to be fascists, or I don't know, but yeah. Yeah, but yeah, just curiosity. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks. Does should I just go through people, or does anyone? Yeah. Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
I'll jump in if you can
Okay.
hear me.
Yeah.
Peter, so I'm with the Book Fair, and
Hi, Peter.
I've recently got into archiving in quite a big way. So starting with visual media, so zines, posters, stickers, things like that. I think these are aspects of our heritage and our history and our social history, and I would really like to see them all readily available, digitized and accessible by everybody who would not just academics looking to peruse through history, but a lot of it is related to now and can be quite useful. So that's what getting into in a minute. Look forward to being in the session. I might not talk a lot simply because doing other book fair stuff, but
great, thanks. We also think that too, so that's good.
Thanks, Peter.
I have a hand up from Peregrine.
There you go, Gary. You live?
Right, I'm Gary. This is Peregrine. We're in Dorset. Can you hear us? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. We're both members of the IWW, and I'm interested myself in radical history, with a particular interest in the Spanish Revolution and Civil War, and labour movement history generally. Also in the UK.
Yeah.
The Great Unrest is a rich field of interest.
Yeah.
And we organise the Dorset Radical Book Fair, and so we are interested in social spaces from the point of view of, we do visit them. It'd be lovely to have one in Dorset, but obviously we haven't at the moment. We're looking out for an opportunity. But social spaces are, of interest to me, places that we can visit up and down the country and meet like-minded people.
Okay, great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to introduce themselves? You can put your hand up in the through the participants list, or just go ahead.
Hey, I'm Ash.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I'm a musician and an anarchist, and over the last years, I've been through a lot of different political spaces, and I guess just I'm interested in like how they would be archived and stuff, because just they come and go quite like increasingly rapidly, it seems, and I guess there's lots of lessons to be learned in the process of making them, and like they can go wrong sometimes, and like there's lessons there, and sometimes they repeat in different spaces where they could have like learned from other spaces mistakes previously. I've also been squatting, and like I don't know, like sometimes there's all this like previous history of squatting, and then but then you don't feel like you wonder where that's all gone, and like there's lessons to be learned from that as well, but you don't know where the people are anymore, or like there are things to read, but yeah, it would be not like nice if with the archiving, I guess, like to have a place to read about that stuff. I don't know what entirely the aim of this is, but I'm interested in it.
Thanks, Ash.
Yeah, I think you kind of also maybe got to some of the hearts of the problems quite quickly of archiving these kind of spaces, in terms of like things being evicted and a lot of that stuff being lost, or there being this quite quick turnover. I thought maybe instead of everyone introducing themselves, maybe if it's the first time to talk in the discussion afterwards, you could introduce yourself so we all know who each other are. I think it's nice in these kind of funny online sessions. So unless anyone is really wanting to introduce themselves now, I can go on to the introduction. And also, does everyone know how to put their hand up on the participants list? Because if you have anything to say, then just please put your hand up and I'll get to you straight away. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna share my screen. So we've been running a series of these workshops around our kind of more recent digital archiving platform that we've been developing, that's called Leftovers. And let me just share my screen. Here we are, sorry. Can everybody see a kind of grey background that says Hackney Gutter Press?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we first started thinking about archiving spaces. Like, we have a lot of material around the squatting movement, but not so much around things like social centres, community centres, info shops and things like that. And we really started thinking about archiving radical spaces when we were actually thinking about like the sort of metadata that goes alongside material. So we always have this field that says place, and you can see here that the place is Hackney, but this is maybe different to the actual space that this material is often produced out of. So in a way, what we realized that the archive is very strongly linked to a number of spaces that are like, yeah, this one is Centerprise in Dalston. I don't know if anyone remembers that. I think it closed down in 2010, but it started in the beginning of the 70s. So this is quite a like long-standing space where a lot of this material came out of. So we started to think about having a category that is space, which is in relation to a more kind of like geographical thing, which would be like Hackney, London, or another city, and came up with this this other category. So if I click on this, you can see that there are all these documents, and this archive has like all the PDFs. It's got some 16,000 items at the moment. It's not all of Mayday's collection, it's taken from many different sources, but you can browse and look at all the PDFs as well. So you've got everything from like Hackney People's Press to Hackney Gutter Press, Race Today, Camera Work. These are all material that in some way mention or run out or are produced in relation to Centerprise in Dalston. And I was going to take you through another few examples of this out of the archive to talk about some of the problems that we've found around thinking about how you start to archive these spaces as well. And I would just say that the session really wants to discuss some of these problems. We want to sort of pool people's collective knowledge around these spaces. Maybe you were involved in a squat that we have not thought about. Maybe people have material that they would like to contribute. Maybe they think, okay, maybe we should discuss a more like oral history approach to these spaces, or what could we learn from people's internal processes? How do you document those historically in terms of as an archival thing? And how really, which is one of Mayday's main concerns, is how can this help us organize in the present? So I think we can probably all agree that there is a sort of poverty of spaces, particularly in London. And I mean, there's some great ones and they're great, but in terms of the history of these places, it's probably quite a low point in terms of these kind of self-organized spaces. And how we can use these kind of building an archive to maybe think about what's missing there. So I'm just going to show you can't seem to get to it. So can everyone see something that says radical spaces with the three images? Okay. So I've pulled out like 3 different examples, all very London centric. Apologies. So if anyone wants to talk about places that are not in London, then that's also great. But I wanted to just talk through a bit around Centerprise, which I've mentioned, 121 Railton Road, and then a kind of early internet space called Backspace, which ran out of Borough until, actually, Anthony, you might know this one. Do you know when Backspace closed down? Oh, you're muted. Anthony, you're muted.
Yep, sorry about that. Yeah, Backspace was like an early kind of internet lab space, and was quite heavily involved in supporting, kind of doing tech support for both Reclaim the Streets, had the first kind of website served for it, and then actually doing this kind of tech street support for the 1999 Carnival against Capital. Is kind of one of Reclaim the Streets' most famous events. But I think it closed in 2000 or 2001.
Yeah.
So it's quite short-lived, like 5 or 6 years from 94, 95.
And then also, if you can see below, there is a list to a kind of collaborative, it's called a collaborative Etherpad. And it's, you can just type on it a bit like Google Documents, but not from Google, and it gives you like a color, but it's anonymous. So we've tried to start to collect a kind of list of different places. So if anyone has any suggestions or anything they would like to add, then please feel free to sort of add that as the session goes on. And
yeah, maybe just to say, so just to say sort of how we generated that list is, it was drawn by, from whenever we kind of came across an interesting sounding space in the collection, whether we knew anything much about it or not, we'd kind of add it to that list. But we're in a kind of active process of trying to, just asking around other people who use the archive at Mayday have kind of suggested spaces. So it would be great if you can type, if you know of a space that's not listed, just to type it in, try and type the dates that existed and the rough location or the actual street address. And we're kind of gradually sort of constantly like looking into these spaces and trying to build up more information about them.
And you can, if everyone can see the link at the top, I'll also post it into the chat. Never sure how to do this. Wait, when you're sharing your screen. Here we are. So I've posted that into the chat. Okay, so yeah, I was just going to go through some of the material that we have, and as a way of starting to sort of think about the problems and maybe possibilities of how you can archive these places. So first we have Centerprise. So you can see a picture there. It also moved locations a few times. And we've also collected some material. There's like an obituary of Centerprise, which I think has quite a good description of like the breadth of what it did and the many different like manifestations of this space over time as well. From it being very involved in the Angry Brigade defense trial to being a kind of space that was more around Black struggles, literacy and kind of education in the area as well. So you can see that there's, again, not only the problem of like how you archive this, but how you archive how those spaces transform over time with different groups, different collectives, different emphases and different kind of resources. So we found that actually one of the really interesting things around looking through our archive, and the archive has like full text search, so you can search for key terms within the documents as well. So a search for Centerprise within the material that we've already collected often comes up with basically the ad pages and the listing pages. And we realized that actually most of these spaces that we have on this pad or well-known spaces, the main mention of this in radical literature is an address. It's like this, I don't know, the Hackney Gutter Press or the People's Paper of Hackney, they come out of these spaces, but there's not very much reference back into those spaces as well. And I don't know if any of you know the Hackney Radical History blog, which is absolutely great, and you should all go and have a look at it. And he mentions that in a way Centerprise is presented as this kind of like radical mailbox where like all the radical groups could use that space to have their post delivered to. So you have this kind of like node within a network of radical politics, but it's quite hard to then maybe get to the bottom of what was going on in terms of those internal practices with like public facing material. There's actually a really good example. I don't know if you guys know On the Record, like an oral history project. They did an oral history project around Centerprise, which is written up and there's a link here. You can also see like there's if you click on any of these links, you can also, it'll take you to the document in our archive as well, so you can kind of have a look at that. And here we have also them as a kind of publishing network as well, and a sort of documentation of that as well in this publication here. And then we've also taken a video which Anthony found, which was a kind of like Save Centerprise video, which we thought was kind of interesting because they're also really talking about like what is left once that space is gone, and how do you sort of document that or better save that space, because otherwise a lot of this stuff will be lost. And a lot of these spaces run their own archives as well, and then you have to think about sort of what happens to them as well. I don't know if you have anything to add, Anthony, on Centerprise?
No, I mean, it's interesting that the kind of in many ways it's like after a space is gone, usually a space exists and it's kind of in fluctuation. There's maybe kind of power struggles around it by different groups or different pressures on the space. But then kind of after it, in a way, it's like there are fragments of it all over the place. So Centerprise was very, well, I know what I know about Centerprise mainly through a figure called Ken Warpole, who was very involved in working class literacy, working class literature. He's very well published himself. I think he ran a lot of oral history projects. So I kind of know, you know, just through this one figure who was prolific, I know a lot of publications he was involved in, and that's how I know about Centerprise. But that's obviously, you know, a tiny bit of the story, and it's quite distributed and not necessarily linked to, you know, a central Centerprise archive or something.
Does anybody have any experience of having gone to Centerprise or been involved, or anything that they might want to add? I mean, we were just trying to give a sort of flavour of the kind of material that gets built around a space that runs for also over, my maths isn't very good, over 40 years, I think. And that was such a, like, you see working in an archive that these same addresses come up over and over and over again. So many on Gray's Inn Road, Centerprise, and also, as we're about to see, also 121 Railton Road, which I think is maybe more than Centerprise, like a more kind of significant space within the anarchist movement. Although saying that, in terms of like the libertarian left in the UK, definitely the early phases of Centerprise around things like the Angry Brigade trial and the Stoke Newington Defence Committee is very key in that as well. So I'm sure some of you have memories of 121 Railton Road. So please, yeah, if you want to make any contribution to that, then just put your hand up. And again, so obviously some particularly significant groups such as the Anarchist Black Cross, Bad Attitude, obviously the Anarchist Black Cross Black Flag is published out of this, a particular also I think maybe the third iteration of the feminist ooh, let me just mute those people. And Shocking Pink. Again, if you click on these, you can see the link at the top. If you click on these, you can also see the full document. And then some news clippings around the kind of the raid. Like, often you get documentation of the space as it ends, not necessarily the space as it was to begin with as well. So you can see the kind of types of material. But again, it's very much like the address. This is how we're distributing. And it very much locates that space within a particular like political milieu, but it's not, again, like how it was run. Like, there's some interviews, there's like some reminiscing around that, but in terms of documentation, this is actually not so strong either. There's a nice article on Past Tense also, which is kind of a reminiscing about that as well. So yeah, this would be another example also of a kind of a squatted space as well, which Centerprise was not as well. So yeah, you see at the bottom here, documentations of not the eviction, but a raid on the bookshop. We also really like this cartoon. Who was this by, Anthony? I forgot. Oh, you're muted.
The cartoon's by a noted anarchist cartoonist who's still living and working in London, called Paul Petard. And it's a kind of allegory of doing your plumbing in a squat, the dangers of what you could bring up.
And also we thought that fixing the plumbing at our local autonomous squat centre also involved saving the whale, which was maybe also a comment to how all these different other processes, not just like a picture of the space or the publications that come out of it, are at play in the maintenance and reproduction of that space as well. I also think in terms of these squatted spaces, like, you realize that obviously the material conditions today have completely changed. Like, no longer can you really squat and live on the dole, and this is how so much of this stuff was reproduced. So I think it's also interesting to important to bear this in mind when we're thinking about what kind of spaces we might need or need to think about today. Does anyone have any kind of contributions around 121 Railton Road? Any memories, any material that they might have that they might want to contribute?
Or indeed any other spaces you'd like to mention or kind of discuss or ask questions about.
There'll also be some time for that after this as well. But anyway, if you think of any memory of 121 Railton Road that you might want to, oh, sorry, we have.
Peregrine.
I was wondering whether all of these spaces that you've got documented there tend to be around London and how much is outside of London.
Yeah, so I said at the beginning it's a bit London centric, and apologies for that. This list tries to move outside that. I mean, the list was formed definitely in terms of our own knowledge, and that is often based around a sort of London scene. But yeah, we're really keen for this not to just be that.
Also the collection we're working with is in many ways not just London focused or even UK focused. It's kind of international, and there's kind of kind of spaces that come up stretching back to the 50s that we're kind of interested in and looking for information about. So but just to kind of begin this process and to contain it for our own work at the beginning, we started with kind of what we know, which is London, and we're kind of, I guess, working our way out from there.
And also, if you look at this link here, which was pasted in the chat, we're really we'd love you guys to pool your collective knowledge of this sort of stuff, and if you want to add some spaces or some links or even some material, if you make a note on that, we can also try and follow that up and do some research. I mean, archiving is also funny because you have a really broad overview of lots of documentation, but you might not know everything about, like, I don't know in great detail the history of Railton Road. You look at it through these sort of documents as well. So we have Ben with your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wanting to say, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just wanted to say there's like Spirit of Revolt in Glasgow who are doing something similar, and also the Autonomous Centre of Edinburgh has like a physical archive of stuff, so it might be worth linking up with them.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm gonna write that in the chat as well. So
yeah, I mean,
thanks a lot.
I don't know if you guys have been to Mayday Rooms, but we also have a physical archive. It's just that we're also because of Corona, we're trying to do this a lot more like digital archiving as well. So that's why we're presenting that. But there is and we've actually had some really nice contributions from the Autonomous Centre in Edinburgh as well, in terms of like duplicates and stuff. There's quite a nice network of these, particularly around the squatting movement, I think, as well. There's quite a lot of interesting material there. Okay. And Peregrine?
It would certainly be worth mentioning the Hydra in Bristol, Hydra Books.
Okay.
Which is now closed because they lost the lease on the building. I'm not sure how long it's been running, but at least 10 years to my knowledge. Used to be hosted radical meetings, union meetings, feminist stuff. They always had a second venue during the Bristol Anarchist Book Fair for performances and talks and things like that. Radical Bookshop. It was home of the Bristol Radical History Group. So I think they're operating part-time out of a vegan cafe at the moment. But
that's great. Could you post the names of those two spaces in either in the chat or on the list?
Yeah. I mean, it would certainly be worth to get the full strength. It'd be worth getting in touch with Bristol Radical History Group, who've got a website. you know.
Yeah.
And they can tell you all about it because they set it up basically
Okay.
originally. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so then the final one was, which we just thought was kind of maybe useful to look at in relation to maybe more like net politics as well. I think they have some interesting spaces, definitely Backspace, which was, I suppose, like one of the first, I don't know if it's accurate to describe like internet cafe, but like something that's based around like early internet politics as well, which was called Backspace. And really, like, yeah, we're very like some of the people. One of the people who was the founder of Backspace is still very involved in Mayday rooms, but there is very little material. So we have like an archived, very early website here, still animating those GIFs after all these years. And then also a very small picture of the inside. And then absolutely nothing else was really like there's some articles that are some people's memories, but like really not that much left of that. And also here you get the problem of archiving spaces that are mainly articulating themselves on an early form of the internet, which is no longer really, which was definitely not archived at the time. So we just wanted to maybe mention that as well. And definitely Backspace, even though it's in London, is much more connected to like media labs and things like that in the rest of Europe, not so much a kind of UK-centric network as well. I don't know if anyone has any memories of Backspace or...
I have a funny memory which I'll share, which is just on the Backspace. I didn't realize for a long time had a actually kind of window onto the Thames, onto the River Thames, and their closing party sometime early 2000s. I was like very drunk and high and climbed down this rope ladder into the Thames.
And survived.
And survived. And they still see the little window of the same building where it is sometimes from across the river. And so remember, oh, that was Backspace. But there's kind of no physical trace of it there. It's just a, new media office, some other company.
Yeah, I mean, I also think in terms of this, also spaces that aren't squats and even spaces that are squats, like this sort of speedy process of gentrification in terms of eradicating the possibility for people to have these spaces. Also something where the documentation of these spaces becomes more and more essential. So because again, the physical space is not going to remain. Are there any, we were going to move on to like maybe a broader discussion about how we might start to build these archival resources. But I just wanted to know if there are any questions so far. Okay, so I'm going to post another, sometimes it's quite hard to click on the thing when you're sharing the screen. 1 second, here we are. Okay, so I'm just going to post another link in the chat.
Sorry.
Someone has also been to some good discussions at Backspace. Okay, so
not good.
not good. Not that good. Okay, okay. So there's a pad in the chat which you can see here, and we were just I'll maybe stop sharing my screen. Wanted to have a sort of discussion around like what we do at Mayday is really try and think about how we can kind of collaboratively work on archives, not just have them as we're an archive and you come and want to view something and then we give it to you, but something that is an idea that like radical history should be a kind of collective process. So although we have our own like ideas around how the kind of documentation we might have around these spaces as well. We really want to sort of talk about how a sort of approach to archiving space, like these kind of spaces, from people who've been involved in them, what kind of material you guys might think are useful, what can the history of these spaces maybe tell us about what kind of spaces we might need for the movement today. Anthony, I don't know if you had anything to add to that?
No, we had these questions, but I think you've kind of mostly covered them. I guess, yeah, I was sort of interested in, I guess, putting some of this research into dialogue with like a question of what radical spaces exist in the UK now, and what radical spaces do people need. Obviously, the whole idea of like sharing space is going through a kind of major distortion at the moment, or a major kind of transformation. So it's a bit early to say how things will pan out, but obviously, you know, a friend a long time ago kind of made the argument to me that in the 2000s there was a big focus on generating social centres in the UK, and I guess that had begun in the 90s. And he said, in a way, well, it doesn't really matter, you know, radical movements make their own spaces. They make them as they kind of need them, and you know, kind of lose them or discard them again when they don't need them anymore. But I think that's quite a particular perspective, but I think, you know, there's some grain of truth in it, but it's not the whole story. So I'm kind of curious to pose that question of, yeah, what spaces do people feel that they need at the moment?
We're also trying to use these kind of more collaborative paths, where for people who might not want to make, like, say, contributions, but if anyone has anything they would like to type in the pad, it's like anonymous. Obviously keep it nice. But yeah, if anyone has any comments that they want to write down, it's not like your name will come up next to it, you can just type. Please don't delete things, but you can also just take notes on that. So we were wondering if anyone had any sort of experience from spaces they might have run or been involved in terms of what you think is sort of interesting to preserve or document from those experiences. Be that the falling out, the splits, the endless processes, or some more positive things.
Just to say, in the chat, there's quite an interesting question from Ben, who says, are you interested in organizing structures? And I think this is maybe the point that Rosemary was making, that those organizing structures, obviously with a space that's gone on for a long time, often change quite a lot, but it's quite invisible, you know, some of that. I think sometimes you get through maybe videos of people who've been involved. Like there's one we posted of One-to-One Railton Road, where someone sort of discussed, they say that they left because of a change in the organizing structure, but they didn't say what it was. So it's quite hard afterwards to reconstruct like how these spaces were organized. So I think it's an interesting question. And
Ben's also said in the chat that he doesn't want to air dirty laundry. That's definitely not what we're after. It's more like sort of constructive processes and things that I think maybe are lost, or like lessons learned from those running those spaces, or structures, and like, yeah, as Anthony said, organizing structures and things like that. So definitely not a kind of, you know, running an archive of radical social movements, you get enough gossip you don't want to know, so we definitely don't want that here. Historical gossip even, so. I suppose maybe also another approach to this discussion might be that if the sort of problems you see with organizing spaces now, and how you think a kind of historical resource around older spaces might help address some of these concerns, or look for these kind of bring up other possibilities that people might have not thought of. I think one of the really interesting things at working at Mayday Rooms is that you see all these different like tactics, tendencies, different strategies, things like that, that have also been forgotten because of, I don't know, yeah, various different reasons, and how they can also really shine a light on organizing in the present. So yeah, I don't know if anyone's involved in any sort of running any spaces at the moment that it can see kind of any or even not just the problems of running these spaces, but also maybe some of the things that you feel like have improved from other spaces people might have been involved in the past. And also, yeah, if anyone has any more suggestions for spaces or material that people might have, then please, yeah, also feel free to type those in there. So there's some discussion in the chat, but we were imagining that this workshop had two parts. So we were wanting to sort of introduce those problems and then have a bit of a discussion around that, problems and possibilities of archiving these spaces. And then we've been really trying to think of different ways that people can collaborate online, which isn't just a Zoom call. So we've been trying to produce these kind of collective scrapbooks from our archive. And so we were thinking that we would have around this time a 10-minute break, and then come back on the same chat link, and if people, for those who want to help us build this scrapbook, we'll be using different sort of open source, free and open source tools to look through our own archive, take some clippings, and produce a scrapbook on a site called Hot Glue. So a scrapbook kind of, maybe Anthony, you could maybe describe what a scrapbook means more than me. I'm sometimes not.
Yeah, that's okay. So the sort of second kind of practical, we've been kind of experimenting with this format a little bit, doing a few different sort of sessions in different places, but usually online. And what we kind of ask in the second section is for people who are interested to kind of basically join us, and we work together. Essentially, we kind of, this website is just a single page with a large canvas, and you can kind of dump any kind of material you want there. You can put images, you can put video, you can put text, headings, links. And so we just, when we say scrapbook, it really is scrappy, and not much of a book. It's more like a kind of giant animated poster. But basically, it's a fairly short, compressed session. It's just an hour. But you can kind of look around on the collection, you know, the archive that we're working on, but also you could look on other sources and just kind of drag material together, and then we kind of work out some way of arranging it. And that kind of leaves us with a little bit of, like, I guess, very high speed group or collective research. And we have kind of something we can kind of mull over and explore later and some kind of trace. Did you want to show the video, Rosemary, or do you want to just
I think it's
move
okay.
to
I mean, it's there on the link, so yeah.
Okay, fine.
So we'll be staying on this channel, but if people come back in 10 minutes. Oh, sorry, Anna from the book fair has. Do you want to unmute yourself?
I was gonna say it can wait until we come back if you want, because there might be a discussion starting. Got two things that I kind of want to talk about. Bring up maybe.
I think maybe bring them up now. I think it would be good.
So, from my experience, like up and down the land, everyone's got a shoebox full of like the leaflets, the zines, the stickers. You know, they got it on their door, and like a lot of this stuff, particularly the regional stuff, kind of only existed in a small bubble to begin with, and bit by bit they end up in the bin or tattered or torn. And I think there needs to be like, I really love this website you got. I think it's great. I think there needs to be I don't know whether there is, but like a Dropbox or something like that, like so people can like scan in their stuff at home, and then like one of the archiving team or whatever at Maydays or elsewhere, or kind of open sourcing it. I don't really know how the website works exactly, but can then collate it and date it, and you know, find out where it came from and do that kind of a legwork. I mean, I know ideally everybody would be up for doing this bit of legwork, but I don't know if they are, and I just hope we can try and find a way to kind of encourage people up and down the country. Like, you know, there's loads of stuff like in Newcastle, in Cardiff, from Swansea, you know, from Manchester and all that, and it kind of just exists in those tiny little hubs. So the more we can kind of like draw that out from people, I guess that's my main point anyway.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in terms of the observation that this stuff comes from like a shoebox under people's bed, like this makes up the majority of our collection. So like I also recommend people keep that stuff under their bed in a shoebox, don't throw it away, although there's less and less paper stuff now. But yeah, this is exactly what our like leftover platform is trying to do. As I said, it's not a I'll share the screen again. It's not just Mayday's archive. It's an attempt at sort of aggregating smaller material. We often go on what I would call like a scavenger hunt around the internet to find these like websites where someone is really into this two particular journals, and we scrape them and we try and bring them all together and try and make connections between these that would not really be made if they were kept in their individual kind of archive or on that website. We always like reference those, and you can always go back to the source of that, but it's an attempt to build this kind of like critical mass of documentation and then think of different ways of bringing those together. But we haven't done this yet, but part of the project is going to develop very much like do-it-yourself digitization workflows as well. So we hope that this becomes a kind of contributor-led site in the future as well. Obviously, there's always someone who has to maybe like coordinate that, or like, as you said, do the legwork. But we hope that this will open up the possibility for people who want to maybe keep their stuff, but also are happy to like take some photos on their phone, do some very basic processing and upload them online as well.
Yeah, and then so two things, for example, like there are, you know, we're quite aware of that there's this work taking place all over the UK. So Rosemary's been in touch with the Sparrow's Nest, who was scanning a huge amount of material, but were kind of maybe their website wasn't so sort of present or prominent. So that material has become part of leftovers and is connected to like material we got from French archives and so on. So there is this, yeah, I mean, in a way, that's the ambition for this leftover site, is to kind of aggregate these kind of smaller projects and link them together. And for example, there's like a load, I've been able to connect material almost that was kind of missing jigsaw cut pieces of other collections we had that was from the Sparrow's Nest, about like the London Workers Group or Workers Playtime. So it's kind of incredibly helpful, and another idea that Rosemary and I were discussing is having a kind of forum as part of Leftovers, where basically people could find other people who are working on this material, help each other, upload it, you know, kind of better, kind of make the kind of metadata record better, improve it, connect information together. So just to kind of process things, I think Ben and Anna had their hand up. So Ben, if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, just a quick thing. Websites, like websites for groups as well, like digital content. Are you planning to create an archive for that kind of thing as well?
It's basically a complete nightmare. Like, sorry, we tried, but basically, you know, the Wayback Machine on Internet Archive?
Yep.
That is, like, I've not found a better way of doing it than that. Oh, sorry, that's not true. We archived the website of Indie Media London and we scraped all their videos for a different project. And then that has been recreated as a static site. But basically, in terms of like the resources you need to be able to do that, we found it quite difficult. So generally, the Wayback Machine we find is actually kind of very good for that. And also the platform we're using is not able to do that. This is mainly PDFs that can link to video and content, but generally, yeah, that's its main purpose. But yeah, definitely there should be I encourage people who think certain websites should be archived to put them into flag them up with the Wayback Machine.
Ben, do you want to come back?
I don't know. Yeah, I think it's, well, I mean, it's because so like I have been responsible for managing a certain number of websites, and like once the group's gone, like the idea of what to do with that code now is like, you know, like if the domain expires and whatever, you know, it's like, you know, it'd be good for me to have somewhere to give that stuff to, you know, basically. Yeah.
You can definitely get in touch with us and we can try and, you know, knock our heads together, think of a way.
I mean, yeah,
and
from a technical standpoint, I can definitely help with that as well. So
thanks. Anna? No, maybe not. Should we go on into a break now and come back at 10 past? Should we say?
Yeah, so if anyone, I mean, just to sort of stress that this is a very much like, we'll be teaching you some tools to use. It's a way to like start to search through our archive collection. Also maybe do your own sort of scavenger hunt on the internet of other material that you might think is useful. And trying to bring this all together on this thing called Hot Glue, which is very interactive kind of platform, but it definitely is a very participatory kind of, just to let you know that, guys. All right, well, thank you all for coming. I don't know if there's any final comments. Okay.
Sound of a van driving off. The sound of a van driving off.
This is my flat's very noisy.
Okay, thanks everybody. Nice to meet you. I hope you've enjoyed it.
And maybe see a few of you in 10 minutes. Hi.
Hey everyone.
So we were gonna start maybe a bit more of the like practical bit of the workshop. So some of it's a bit technical, hopefully not too technical, but if you are stuck, please just like let us know and we can talk you through stuff, because obviously we're trying to experiment with like different tools to help people like produce stuff together online, particularly in this kind of like Corona context as well. So some of it is a bit rough, but I think also kind of an interesting approach to these kind of things. can everyone hear me all right, or is back?
Thanks, Ash.
Okay, cool, thanks. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. We've been running a series of workshops. We ran one with the London Renters Union around the history of rent strikes. So I was going to show you some of the material that we gathered through that. We also hope that this section is a good way of you getting to know the Leftovers archive that I had told you, mentioned in I showed in the first section. And then, we're really trying to think of ways that the Leftovers archive is not just a repository, but something that people can be much more active in. So we're looking at how you can take clippings from archival like PDFs in there, and then try and like recombine them, turn them into other things. They can be like resources of previous struggles, or I suppose whatever you like, really. So that's what we've been trying to do. So we're also developing that software at the moment. But at the moment, as a standby, we're using a tool called Hot Glue, which I don't know if any of you have heard of, but it's a very kind of quite basic, but also very malleable way of making websites. So I'll just share my screen and show you an example of what we're hoping to create. Oh, wait. Yeah. Okay, so can everyone see that? Oh, no, not that. Okay, so these are, this was a workshop around rent strikes. And we went from, have a big collection of the Black Panther Party papers. So we were looking at like their reporting of tenant strikes in the UK, not the UK, the US. And then people brought in material from LA Tenants Union, which is a contemporary union. We looked at some rent strikes in Belfast, the Kirkby rent strike in Liverpool through a newspaper called Big Flame. And then we had a lot of people from Living Rent in Glasgow, and we really, I mean, this has also been highlighted in this workshop, is that maybe we need to branch out into a more regional perspective, but we didn't have very much on Glasgow rent strikes, and there was obviously a really big one in 1919. So they also brought some material. So not all this material is taken from our archive, but there is also people going, during the workshop, people were bringing together different online resources, sometimes as links, sometimes as screenshots, and sometimes, if it's from our archive, using a kind of cropping tool that we have as well.
Then, so just to say, Rosemary, just to jump in, so just obviously a Hot Glue page is just a big blank white page, and you know, we asked a group of 8 people to kind of just, you know, stick stuff on it, use it as a kind of blank canvas. But before we discussed like how to organize this material, what kind of material we're interested in, and how to organize it, so we, for that one, we came up with more or less a kind of map of the UK. So roughly, you know, Glasgow is up the top, you know, Liverpool is a little bit below, and kind of so on. So the, you know, sort of working left to right, corresponding to east and west. So East London is down, you know, kind of towards the bottom on the right, and so that's how we kind of organised the page, and that sort of reflected maybe this, you know, trying to cover UK rent strikes in a kind of big constellation, but one that reflected their geographical location.
So what I'm going to do now is give you all the link to the Hot Glue that we have set up and the password. Anthony, maybe you could then write a title so we all know it's the right page.
Okay.
Except I have 1 second. Sorry, I just needed to find that link. So this is the link that this is the page that we'll be using. When you go onto this link, it will ask you for a password that I will just put in the chat now. One thing to say is if you're adding, it's fine to get multiple people to work on it, but you might have to refresh every so often to see what other people have put on. So it might be that you put on something and then someone puts something over the top because they haven't refreshed. So a lot of refreshing is generally a good idea.
As in refreshing your browser. That is, you know, so clicking the kind of reload button on your browser.
Can everyone see the username and password for this particular thing? And has everyone been able to get onto the the pad? I'll give people a few minutes to do that. Can you let me know if there's any problems? Or even if you've been able to do it, maybe that's better than if there's any problems.
Should it just be like a blank white page at the moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you refresh, hopefully you see a title now. Oh, maybe not, still not. Okay.
Do you want me to do it, Anthony? Or is it?
Yeah, I just can't even, yeah, it's I'm really out of practice.
Can someone, yeah, okay.
I've changed the title, but not in a way that it appears.
Can people see, if they refresh it now, can they see it?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, great, thank you. Sorry. As I said, this is a work in progress in terms of how people use this, but yeah. Okay, so that was just to get you onto the thing that we're ultimately going to be putting that material on. I was going to do a quick demonstration of how you add things on Hot Glue first, and then we're going to have a look at the archive. If people have particular material that they want to add as we're going along with the tutorial and the archive kind of tour, then please just feel free to put it on. Again, it's anonymous. There's no wrong hot glue. And yeah, it's a good way of like pooling material as well. Often in these workshops, we then like go round at the end and people can kind of maybe talk about the material they put off as well. So yeah. And yeah, as I said, just refresh. Refresh is quite good. I'll add you can everyone see a grid now? No, you can't. Doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm gonna share my screen again. Okay. So one of the things that might be quite good when you're using Hot Glue is that if you zoom into your browser, does everybody know how to do that? Usually press Control or Command and then the plus and minus keys, like I'm doing now. Because at 100%, oh no, sorry, zoom out of your browser. Sorry, not zoom in. So you can get a bigger overview of the page. So Hot Glue is super easy to use. Basically, once you're in this edit mode, if you just click, can you see how I've clicked here? You get these 4 different options. you can upload a file, you can add a text object, which is what I did then. You can embed another website. So if you think back to the Backspace webpage that I had at the beginning of the workshop, that was an embedded website on this page. So it means that you can have websites within websites. You can also add a video. So say we wanted to put the Centerprise video on, which was around saving Centerprise. You can do that directly from just putting the YouTube URL in. So I'm gonna go ahead and does everyone want to have a go at uploading a file? So if you click, actually no, maybe that's not a good idea. Anyway, I'll show you.
Rosie, just 1 second. Maybe it's a good idea to just explain the 1-click, 2-click difference.
So if you click once on the page, you get these 4 options.
Okay, someone is muted. It's all right, I've done it.
Okay. If you click twice, you get a load of other options which we're not interested at this point. So you basically just want to be clicking once. And that means you can upload an image file like a JPEG or a PNG. Doesn't work so well with PDFs or Word documents. So it's more image files. If you click on add a text object, you get these boxes. And it's like adding a text box to anything. If you click inside, you can type. So let's say Centerprise. I got really confused with Centerprise because I realized that I'm never sure which is the American or British spelling of center, so I was doing it wrong. It's the American one, right?
I think they use the American one. Yeah.
So you can type in here. You can use this all these different icons do different things to the text. So you can make it bigger by like dragging that icon to make it bigger. And you can then change the color of the text like this. Oh, that didn't work. By clicking on this. That gone yellow? No. Why is that not working? It's because I need to do that, yeah. Okay, so you have to click 2 times on the color. And then you can also then move this down by pressing return. And then you have a box that you can move around the place. So say you wanted to look at material from Centerprise, you can also make a heading. What we also found was quite nice was people were like transcribing bits out of archives. So if there's like a bit of text that you like, you can maybe copy and paste it into a text box. So it like becomes outside the archive or like image, but actually you kind of like the text instead. I was gonna, let me just stop sharing to see if there's any questions. Is everyone okay with adding, does everyone want to have a go at adding some text or uploading a file at this point? Or does everyone feel kind of confident with that? Again, we'll be there to answer questions if you have any.
Yeah,
Anthony,
ask questions in the chat or just turn on your microphone and jump in or raise your hand, whichever you prefer.
Okay, so that gives you an idea of what we will be doing. I'm going to then talk a bit about how to take clippings from the archive. But as I said, like, if I think back to how I made the little web page around Centerprise, like that image is not from our archive. It's from an article or like a Google image search that looked at that place, because we don't really archive photographs so much. So, you know, if you think of your maybe a social center you're involved in, or a squat, or the name of the road that you think is relevant for this history, then, you know, do an image search and upload it to the pad, and maybe like write a little bit about what it was, and that would really sort of help us kind of build a more like comprehensive idea of what people think is important in relation to these spaces. Are there any other questions so far?
Could you just remind me how to move things around, Rosemary?
You just click on them and move them, as long as they don't have the icons. So if let me share my screen again.
Oh yeah.
So if you have it like this and you can see icons, doesn't work. If you just move this around, then if it doesn't have that, you can just move it around. Let me also just paste. So Hot Glue is like a public site as well. We have our own installation of it as the software on our server, but this is also, you can actually make your own hot glue. So if you're interested in making your own websites and you're like, I can't bear to either run a subscription site or do another WordPress installation, hot glue is actually quite good. And there's a how-to guide that I just posted in the chat as well. You can also look at all the really hilarious other hot glues that people have done. They're all a bit kind of maybe post-internet, but Ash?
Hey, I was just wondering if you're trying to keep the archive as a sort of more historical thing, or you also like going to try and like collect more current spaces, and like I guess that way then you'd have like less work to do in the future once those spaces are gone, and then like, you can get them added as it goes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Also, we tried to do a project where we archived the housing movements of London of the previous 5 years from the project. And I think, was it you that brought this up around websites before? Like it's a very different task in a way. Like I realized that our archive kind of stops when like internet 2.0 in a way, because you're mainly archiving images that are posters or memes, or you have to scrape someone's Twitter account or something like that. So it becomes a different kind of task, which we are thinking about, but it does definitely becomes harder as well. Like we have this archive of the Latin American Workers Association, which is the organization that a lot of the kind of prominent base unions at the moment came out of, and they gave us like printouts of all their emails, which was also kind of a funny archival thing to think about as well. Because not only were they also in Spanish, but they're also not an original, and also there are loads of them. So is it more interesting to have these as printouts that have been filed, or is it useful to have this as a kind of like database? But then what does that mean to continue like updating that, or how you make that accessible? Because these are also like internal stuff as well, which I think is also maybe a question that we have around this like radical space, archiving radical spaces. Like a lot of the stuff that's maybe interesting is like internal structures, but how much of that is also private? So yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to go through, share my screen again. I'm going to go through yeah, I'm going to go through leftovers, the archive. So again, let me paste a link in the chat. Quite hard to access the chat when you've can you paste the leftovers link in the chat, Anthony?
Sure, but just general one, yeah.
Even the one that has the beans on at the beginning.
Yeah. Where is the chat? Yeah, here. There you go.
Yep. So can everyone see that? Able to go onto that link? Which one was it? Was it the normal one or the archive one?
The one I posted, or
yeah. Sorry,
just the.
Oh, here we are. I found the chat again.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So this is an archive that we've been building, and I'm going to show you a little bit around that at this moment. My view is going to be slightly different because I'm the admin, but you can also sign up for an account. So if you want to like edit things, if you just want to browse, then you can just do that as a guest. So if you can see the bottom left hand side, I have there should be, if you scroll down, there is a thing that says featured collections. Can everybody see that? I'll take that as a yes. And if you go all the way down to the bottom, there's 3 different collections. So we have, well, actually that should say spaces rather than space. We have Centerprise, 56A Info Shop, and 121 Railton Road, which I showed you briefly before. Now, you don't have to just look at those collections. All the documents in this archive have been what we call OCR'd, which means that they are like text readable. So you can search inside the document. So you're not just searching for data about the document, which would be metadata, but you could type in, I don't know, like frog into the search, and it will tell you every document in which frog appears, which makes searching an archive a sort of very different task than it would be to like go to the library and look for a title. So we think that this has a quite interesting, presents more interesting possibilities for looking at material as well. So what you can do is can everyone see this top right hand search bar? So you can search for keywords in that through what we call the full text search. So can people see? I've gone down to the bottom of this drop down menu next to the search bar, and I've chosen full text. And then let me try, because I said frog, let's try frog. I've searched for frog, and there's only 3 documents and 16,000 that mention frog. Now that's probably not a great search. So does someone want to maybe shout out a social space or something that we can I can search for?
I try I think you might get nothing, but try Rampart Social Center.
Like this? Wait.
Yeah, one word. Rampart.
Okay, there aren't any there. I'm trying to, yeah, so if you type in Railton Road, actually if you have 2 words, you need to put it in quotations. You can find a lot of different material as well. I mean, this is useful if you're not completely sure what you're searching for as well. You can try and type in squat, or you could also spell squat correctly. That would also help. You can type in squat, and then it will have documents that refer to squat. Now I'm pretty sure there's more than that, but I think that's within another search. So you can either search through this way, or you can use the fields at the top. If you don't see those fields, please let us know, and I'll tell you how to view them. Yeah, so this is a better. So squat, a search for squat within the documents comes up with 1,000 different documents as well. So what we're going to do now is look at how you then look at the document. And I'll also post in the chat when I finish this, the like how-to guide for leftover searching as well. So here you can see Hackney Gutter Press. And you can see the different types of metadata that we've put in for this. So it's not the usual metadata that you might get from a normal cataloging system. You also have things like space, which we've been thinking about. We've also added some new ones, which are tactics, which we thought was an interesting way of turning a sort of historical archive into a political resource. So you can click on Rent Strike and you'll get a series of documents that are all around, have mentions historically of rent strikes. So if you're organizing a rent strike in the present, maybe you want to look at what the Black Panthers were doing in the 1970s, or you might want to look at what Solidarity magazine has, a journal, has to say about rent strikes, or libertarian struggles, etc., etc. We also have this new field, which is called antagonisms, which we haven't filled out very much, but I have like high hopes for this being a productive field for searching through documents. And then we also have social movements, events, and associated groups and people. You'll probably notice within the archive that most of the author field is empty, because these are mainly collectively authored or like group authored texts. So much more likely you'll find a group rather than an author. I think that also has some interesting things to say about authorship within political organizing as well.
Just briefly, we had a suggestion from the stream, which was to search Cowley Club. Just because you're sharing your screen, if you could give that a try.
I sure can.
Thanks for that.
This is no apology. If there's nothing on this, please then send us some documents.
Don't worry, there is, but it's a bit repetitive.
Wait, I didn't get anything. Oh no, that's in Find All, sorry.
Yeah.
Not following my own advice, yes, okay. Oh, so many. It's because we have all of Schnooze.
Yeah, it's Schnooze and Freedom.
Yeah, look at all those Schnooze, yeah. So for those on the Twitch stream who are interested in the mentions of the Cowley Club, yeah, if you can follow these links, then you'll be able to find, yeah, we put, I think it's pretty much all of Schnooze, and we also
and
put
Freedom.
Yeah, Freedom we took from the fantastic job that Freedom did of digitizing all of Freedoms as well. So. As I said, all of these are like referenced, but yeah, it's just an attempt to aggregate them. I have a sneaking suspicion my computer is about to crash because I've been using. So if that's the case, Anthony, you still co-host?
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Okay, cool. Okay, so let's.
Do you want me to start to do that? Or...
I'm just going to stop sharing and then we can go. Maybe I'll try again. It wasn't letting me click on the things. Sorry about this. So once you see the grid, you've done your search, you can also then click on the document and you will find a PDF of that document. Also, if you scroll down within the individual item entry, you see a kind of graphic reproduction of what that document looks like page by page, which I think can also be useful. And if you click on that page, you get to, it will take you to precisely that page. And see, this is not working for me. I don't know why.
What's that? Oh.
Can you? I might have to restart something.
Okay. Do you want me to share my screen and I'll try and? Yeah. Okay.
Wait.
Shall
Let me just
that?
go.
Okay.
I haven't told you how to do the thing that I'm gonna teach people how to do.
Okay. Yeah. This picture.
Yeah. It's the cropping. Yeah. Okay, now it's working. Can everyone see that?
See Hackney
Okay, so I've
Gaffer
taken
People's Press.
Hackney's People's Press. So then you can click on the thumbnail, or you can go to view document at the top, and you can see all the PDFs. It's probably a particularly big one that won't load. And then say you want to take a picture of this clipping and put it on hot glue. We have this new function where you can crop the PDF. So if you click on, did everyone see that icon? If you...
No, I didn't.
So can you see this icon up here? There's a little crop.
Mm.
On the top right hand corner of the
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so if you click on that, it will take you to this, and then you can just take a clipping. It's kind of like what you might do with an old newspaper, and you just draw the box around that. And then so if we go back to the if we go to the ether, the pad that we've been writing stuff on, you can copy and paste. Oh no.
Right. Someone's yeah.
So it will give you a link to the image at the top, which you can then put into this pad, and it will give you that image, which can then be saved and put into hot glue. So this is like a workflow that's in progress. You can also put that image link in the browser and and it will give you that image. So I'll show you like this. So if you open that image link, it will show you that image in your browser, and then you can save that image as you would normally save an image. So I'll save that to documents, and then I can upload that to the hot glue. So I don't know, people might want to just have a go at looking through the archive and asking questions in the remaining time, or people might want to have a go at these clippings and adding this to the hot glue. I realize we only have 15 minutes left. Maybe it took a bit longer than we thought. So I can't see the chat, but maybe if people want to say, yeah, if people want to have a chance to look through the archive and then ask us some questions, if you guys want to take some clippings in that way, or want us to reiterate some of it, then please let us know. And I'm happy to also go through that again. Okay, we'll just yeah, let people have a look at the archive. If you have any questions, please let us know. We only have really 10 minutes more, and if anyone has some final suggestions that they want to add into this collective pad, then that would be great. Equally, we have the other one, which is the list of spaces. I'm putting these in the chat here. Yeah. So maybe start with some full text search of the archive, like some spaces that you want to see if there's anything about. Also, it can just be an opportunity for you to have a look at the archive yourself, and it doesn't have to be about radical spaces. And we'll be also adding things to the pad.
Rosemary, could you just run through one more time the clipping function? Because I'm just trying to take a clipping of something, or I'll just tell you, I'll describe the problem. I've got the PDF up. I clipped on the clipping thing.
Yeah.
I've marked an image in the center of the page, and but what's next? You know, I've kind of outlined it.
Okay, so let's go. Yeah.
I mean,
So can you see my screen?
yeah.
Okay, so there's this clipping function, the crop here. You see that?
Yeah.
Oop.
I actually do. Yeah.
So then you've done this bit where you take the clipping like this?
Yeah, I've drawn around something. Yep.
And then sometimes it just automatically goes into your clipboard, so you can just paste it straight into that pad. Or can you see that there's this like JPEG URL at the top?
Okay.
So if you copy that, and then you can just paste it into the browser.
Oh, yeah.
You get.
I've got it. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Let's see if this works. Yep. So many windows.
Yeah, that is a problem. So also, Anthony, you can just paste it straight into a pad. So if I think my computer's not happy, but
I was trying to add it to Hotglue, but
it's also just
yeah. Go on.
Yeah, if you paste it into the pad, it will automatically recognize it as an image and come up.
Yeah.
So also just before we have to end, yeah, please check out Leftovers. We're trying to build it into a kind of collective resource. If you have any material that you think you'd like to add to it, or you want some advice digitizing things, then please let us know, not only in regards to like radical spaces, but anything. We generally archiving, it's like generally a post 68 archive that is much more along kind of like anti-authoritarian left. So yeah, we will take a lot of material from that. So yeah, if anyone sign up for an account, if you have any comments, then you can also email us. I'll put the Mayday email in the chat. And as Anthony said, like we are under much more restricted access, but if you would like to come and visit the archive, actually, I'm also not in the country, so I'm not quite sure about the regulations, but if you want to come and visit the archive, you can also book an appointment, and there's a whole kind of COVID policy which makes it safe to do so. So yeah. But yeah, if you want to also more remotely get involved, then yeah, we're doing a lot of work on Leftovers at the moment. Also, if you have any kind of like, we have all of the workerist group from Italy, Lotta Continua, and we just found all their scans of all their papers on this like very small archival, but not even a kind of left archive, on just a website where they're all saved as individual JPEGs that we then stitch together. So if you've come across material that you think is interesting, please also let us know about that. I'm sorry we didn't get to do more of the hot glue, but hopefully it will give you a taste of the archive. And also, if you want to make your own website on hot glue, then that's also kind of, I think, quite fun. And yeah, hopefully if you want to take clippings from the archive or just browse it, then that's given you a bit of a taste of how to do. Before we leave, does anyone have any questions or any questions on how to like navigate Leftovers that they want to ask before we wrap up?
Thanks, Ian.
And also we'll be developing a kind of, yeah, sorry, Millie, yeah, I will definitely do that. I forgot. That's the problem with these online sessions, is there's so many links that you always forget about. So this is just a guide to searching Leftovers. It's not really how you edit things and stuff, but if you browse and you want to get involved, definitely not all the metadata has been inputted, and you want to get involved in that, please drop us a line at the email above and we can do some more like training on how to do that. But this guide in the chat now shows you more about, yeah, just sort of the search stuff that I was going through. Okay, cool. Well, I think maybe we'll wrap it up here. And
thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah, thanks for everyone for attending. Shall I just, yeah. Okay, all right, bye. Oh, sorry. Ooh, Nina, yes, that is possible. Are you wanting to donate it like physical material, or you want to learn how to do like digitization of it?
Yeah, maybe more physical material, like zines, but right now, of course, I can't travel, but I don't know, maybe in a year or so, that it's possible to bring it to your space, or how does that work? Or
yeah, definitely
yeah,
send it.
The best thing would be Well, if you begin by, if you could write a list of what you have, and begin to kind of see, sort of organize some basic system, and then if you email us, and we can have a conversation, and yeah, we'd be very, we'd be open to receiving material.
Okay.
Totally.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
I'm just answering some stuff in the chat. We're thinking to. Okay, I'll leave it a few minutes if anyone wants to write anything else in the chat, and then I'll end the session. Right, I'm gonna end the session now. All right, bye everybody.